involving multiple people.
Right.
And then later on to find it's a gay bar.
Yeah, right. And
I was like, oh my God, is he gay? I was scared. Oh my God, shit, is he gay? And he's not gay. So it's
well, you guys had conversations about that. You were.
Oh yeah,
you told him. Yeah, you were adamant that gay is bad.
I'm Mormon. I'm a conservative Republican, and we don't do gay. We don't do gay.
Yeah.
I can't get answers from the attorneys really, but they're saying that some of these, it's involving a gay bar or some shit. I don't know. I don't know what the heck you did at a gay bar. I don't know what's going on.
Well, he's accused of going on a mass shooting at a gay bar and killing 5 people.
Colorado.
Okay, well, that's shit. If he's accused of doing that, I'm surprised he's not gay. I'd say that, but he's not gay.
China has announced that it will hold a COVID press briefing at 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And just a few hours ago, Congress passed the Respect for Marriage Act, which enshrines the right to marry whomever you choose, regardless of sexual preference, into law. More on that in a minute. But in the meantime, my name is Nicholas Lamar Suter, and welcome to Overtime. It's been a week. It's been more than a week. I've been jonesing. I've been wanting to discuss the news, and this is Overtime, so we'll probably be doing a little less discussing than I would otherwise want to do. Although I think some of these topics do merit discussion. We've been off air for a little bit, so there's more to cover than we would normally like to leave. However, we're not going to be able to get to all of it. I did, before we start, wanted to discuss one brief thing. We were not broadcasting because we received a strike. The strike was for, if you can believe it or not, misinformation, that apparently we were saying things that weren't true. I am immensely proud of our record for handling information accurately and correcting ourselves on the reasonably rare occasions when we don't. And we've certainly never deliberately said things that were not true. Our previous strike was when we were covering Liz Cheney's re-election campaign. I will say this, I'm not a fan of her family by any stretch of the imagination, but there are very few people left, especially on the conservative side, that put their country before their ideology. And I had decided that when she had her primaries, I wanted to be on air to cover it, knowing full well what the results would be. We all knew. But I thought I was proud that In Time was doing that. But when she lost, our former President Donald J. Trump had a few things to say. We considered that newsworthy, believe it or not. I think the man's an utter buffoon. I've not been shy about saying that. But he is a former president. He is ostensibly the presumptive nominee for the Republican Party. When he speaks on politics, it is by definition news. So we quoted what he said, most of which was utter horseshit, in my view. We made that crystal clear, mostly by mocking him to the point where we were falling out of our seats. And we got a strike for that because we repeated what he had said, which was, in fact, horseshit. It's odd. How do you debunk what somebody is saying without first telling people what they're saying? I applaud that YouTube is making such an effort to come down on misinformation. It's extraordinarily important, and all of American society is so far behind the ball on that right now. Having said that, I think striking channels that are working very hard to help with that effort is not necessarily a good idea. Having said that, we have very little say in the matter. Sometimes our appeals are successful, sometimes they're not. I stand by everything, and I stand by the episodes which they chose to strike and keep struck. They're wrong. Period. Not that I can do much about it. I've seen bigger channels survive strikes quite easily. They're bringing in a lot of revenue, and YouTube's policies are deliberately vague so that they can really pretty easily pick and choose, and they don't really worry too much about the smaller channels. Now, we've been growing rapidly, and I'd like to continue doing that, but we're not the size yet where we have that much influence. So to that end, the reason I'm saying all of this is it is distinctly possible that in time we'll not be able to continue on YouTube. This is not punitive. They are my preferred platform of choice, and there's a number of reasons for that. The strikes notwithstanding. There are actually a few platforms that have a larger audience, Facebook being one of them, if I recall. But the monetization, the ability to reach out to other content creators, to reach out to our own audience is unparalleled. So we would like to stay with YouTube, and our current intentions are very much to stay, but repeated strikes may very easily make that difficult. So what can you do? Well, if you enjoy our content, join us on the Discord, and we can talk to people about what our plans are, if they change and how. Vimeo, Facebook, obviously, Odyssey. We're on a number of other platforms and can exclusively stream there if we have to. We get some decent monetization from YouTube, which I appreciate, but truth be told, In Time is supported largely by its patrons. Now, the reason for this is because we get demonetized pretty frequently. Our topics are ones that advertisers don't always want to advertise on. So it's largely through the contributions of our viewers and the support of our viewers that we can operate. For that, thank you. I enjoy doing this, and I feel like it's a positive contribution, so I've lucked out. I get to do something good and that I enjoy. If you support the show and would like to continue to support it, regardless of what platform we may end up on, think about becoming a patron. We'll be having a patron hangout on, I think it's next Monday, the first Monday of every month. We're going to be discussing this and one or two other issues regarding the general direction of the show. So I hope you guys will join us for that. Supporters of any kind. If you've ever given us a super chat, if you've become a member, if you've supported us in any way, even just volunteering, this includes our mods, you are welcome at the patron hangouts. We'll be distributing the link on Monday. Hope to see you guys there. With all of that business out of the way, let's talk about some of the things that have been happening in the last last week or so. Just moments after midnight on November 24th, E. Jean Carroll filed what she described as a rape suit against former President Donald Trump. She has previously accused Donald Trump of raping her 27 years ago, to which he replied, quote, "That's impossible. She's not even my type." I shit you not. Jesus, I can't get in through to the first paragraph before I say something that is A, probably going to get us demonetized, but B, utterly insane. The former columnist for Elle magazine is suing him for battery and for defamation, saying that he was falsely telling followers on social media that he did not know her and had not raped her. And she filed on the 24th under New York's Adult Survivors Act, a law which took effect at midnight and grants exactly 1 year for people to sue over alleged sexual misconduct, even if the statute of limitations has expired. Adding to Trump's legal troubles, the U.S. Supreme Court cleared the way for Congress to get Trump's tax returns. Congress requested 6 years of tax returns from Trump and a number of his companies. Trump has fought it. He lost in the courts, appealed once, lost the appeal, appealed again to the U.S. Supreme Court. They put a stay on the subpoena until they could consider whether or not they would hear the case, and after thorough consideration, decided that they would not hear it and ordered a brief order without dissent, telling the Treasury Department that they should hand over all of the documents. Now, there's no timeline as to when those documents will be handed over, but Congress is seeking them as rapidly as possible before control of the committee switches from the Democrats to the Republicans in January. Meanwhile, NPR has discovered that 3 years ago, Donald Trump tweeted out an image which was amongst the most classified images in the U.S. Records. The image had been shared with him during a presidential briefing. There was a poster that had been blown up and had an image of an Iranian missile site. He asked if he could get a copy of it, which he was given. He then took a picture of that copy with his phone and tweeted it. Now, the photo was of such high quality that when people first saw it, first of all, they thought this had to be a joke, that there would be no way that the President of the United States would tweet intelligence information from satellite imagery obtained over Iran. But it turned out he did. It was unredacted, and it was in its full quality. The next thing that most even experts in U.S. intelligence assumed was this had to be a drone. There were no known U.S. satellites capable of images that sharp. No, they were able to look at the image, dissect it, and realize it wasn't a drone that took it. It was a satellite, meaning the U.S. had stronger and more powerful satellite technology than even our allies was aware of, until Trump tweeted out that photo. Now, let's see. We have the photo. It has since been redacted. It was redacted, or not redacted. It has been declassified. The existence of the satellite is now known. It's not bragged about, but we do know the satellite. We know roughly its capabilities. And so the image was redacted. We're going to show it to you so that you can understand to some extent why this is such an issue. This is the tweet that he sent out. That is the image below. That image was made for the president so that he could understand what we were looking at. It was by our most powerful spy satellite, again, more powerful than even our allies knew what we could do. This is the original image here that has been redacted as of, I think it was last week. The quality of that image is staggering, and it was taken from space. This is a blow-up of the image that he tweeted. This appears to be a copy of the original intelligence that he was given, and he took a picture of it. Note the bright spot in the middle from the flash. You can see his hand just below that and to the left as he's holding the camera. You can see his head and shoulders as he is taking a photograph of the most, some of the most classified intelligence secrets we had at the time before putting them out on Twitter. Now, I've gotten into a number of discussions with conservatives about this, and the common argument is, well, he can declassify anything he wants. Let's put that aside for a second and not argue that. We've argued that before. I'm confident that I can address that, but let's put that aside. Okay, let's say he can. If he decides that he's going to walk over to Russia and literally hand them the U.S. nuclear codes, is that okay? I mean, he can do it. Is that okay? Oh, he'd never do it? Well, put that aside too. Is it okay if a U.S. president were to do that? And not for some reason, not to establish trust or some secret backroom deal, but because he wanted to brag that he had them. Just for shits and giggles. Is that okay? is a person who would do that qualified to hold office? We often ask, is Trump actually qualified to hold office? Let's ignore whether any of this is illegal or not. He has so little understanding of U.S. intelligence that he took a top secret briefing, photographed what was in it, and just dropped it on Twitter for no reason. Does the fact it was legal actually matter anymore? If it doesn't, I think conservatives need to try to understand what it means to be a conservative, because that's unhinged. At any rate, quote, the entire U.S. intelligence community is incredibly averse to letting this kind of information out, said Lewis. The idea that the president would just scream YOLO, photograph it, and tweet it out is extremely hard to take. Lone Star Politics, in describing Texas, once said that Texas had always been about freedom, where government helps control the border, but otherwise stays out of the lives of citizens. A paradise, I suppose, for conservatives who know that the government should stay out of their personal affairs and that people should be trusted to run their own lives. Quote, Texans view government as too intrusive and don't want government to tell them how to conduct their business, whether their business is selling electronics, guns, clean air, social services, or healthcare. Texans have a long history of being individuals. The only thing they want from government is a secure frontier. Well, that's awfully nice. I understand the sentiment, but I did find it somewhat in contrast to what happened just a couple of weeks ago when no fewer than 5, actually closer to 10, depending on how you measure it, bills were brought before the Texas state legislature criminalizing a freedom. For example, HB 643 and HB 708 would classify any venue with a drag show as being, quote, a sexually oriented business, along the lines of, say, a strip club with all of the same regulations imposed upon it that you would find at a establishment like a strip club or a X-rated video store. A definition of a drag performance, according to the bill, is, quote, a performance in which the performer exhibits a gender identity that is different than the performer's gender identity assigned at birth, using clothing, makeup, or other physical markers, and sayings, listings, dances, or otherwise performed before an audience for entertainment. That's the definition. Nothing in that definition talks about sexually suggestive activity in any way whatsoever. Basically says not allowed to cross-dress, for lack of a better word. Problem is, it's been done in performances since the Greeks. One of the more famous ones in my area is the Hasty Pudding Club, which is a undergraduate organization at Harvard. And while the organization has men and women, they put on every year a play. And that play, the Hasty Pudding production, is usually a comedy act and is acted by only men. Male and female roles are taken by men. That would now be banned under most public venues. It would be banned under any venue that is not prepared to handle hard R or X-rated content. Utterly, I won't even get into it. There's a long history of these kinds of performances, and men playing female roles, and on occasion women playing male roles. Governor Greg Abbott has already declared also that the parents of trans children should be investigated and prosecuted for abuse. even when gender dysphoria has been correctly and easily diagnosed by a medical professional who knows a lot more about this kind of thing than Governor Abbott. The great state of Texas is directly intervening in the medical decisions made by private citizens and their doctors, and in the great tradition of ensuring the totalitarian rule of, say, a monarchy, has made sweeping, uninformed, and ignorant decisions for all of its citizens. Abbott has been largely thwarted on that previous legislation, due primarily to the fact that Texas law does not deem gender-affirming care to be child abuse. But he has decided not to let that stand in his way, and knowing what's best for all free Texas citizens, especially those who are not like him, he has supported bills HB 42, 672, and 436, which would define gender-affirming care for trans youth as, quote, child abuse in the Texas Civil Code, and in direct contradiction to the opinion of practically every medical professional in the country and on the planet, including, by the way, the Mayo Clinic, the National Institutes of Health, and the World Organization, has decided that this should be punishable by death. The American Medical Association has, in part, presumably due to this, but also due to changes in abortion, have come out and said it is the obligation of every medical professional to provide the best medical care for their patients, even if it's against the law. They're right. Everybody knows they're right. Except for Greg Abbott, I suppose. These bills would criminalize what we now know, haven't guessed. It's not a guess. I don't care whether you understand it or not. I don't care whether you like it or not. We know for a fact that this is life-saving care in a number of instances for children. If you don't agree with me, then you haven't studied it. Why not study it and then reach a conclusion? If you care about children, you don't have to agree with the bill. But at least learn what medical professionals who understand this a shit ton better than you are saying before you say they're wrong. And figure out why. Otherwise, you don't care about human beings, let alone and especially children. HB 41 and HB 122 go a step further by criminalizing this care, making it a felony for healthcare providers to perform any gender-affirming care. It also strips liability insurance from providers who assist in such treatments. Yeah. HB 631 is almost an exact duplicate of Florida's infamous, quote, Don't Say Gay bill, forcing gay teachers to hide pictures of their family, eliminate pride flags, and all but erasing any evidence that there is such a thing as gay people from the public schools. This will no doubt come in contact with what I said earlier, which was the Marriage Act, which passed earlier today, which is designed to enshrine gay marriage into U.S. law. Cautiously optimistic about it. I think it's a good sign. I think the House has already, SCOTUS has already set up a way to even take that down, arguing something along the lines of Dred Scott. It's for another time. So I'm not thinking that this is over, but it's a huge step. And I think SCOTUS is going to rethink how far they're going to take some of these things, because there's been a lot of backlash and a lot of talking about just what it would take to impeach members of the Supreme Court. So we'll see. All that notwithstanding, if that becomes law, which it's expected to pass the House, Biden is going to sign it. It seems like a number of these bills pertaining to homosexual teachers is not going to pass muster. We'll see. The Respect for Marriage Act, in fact, did pass today by a vote of 61 to 36, making it a veto-proof majority, with 12 Republicans joining forces with all Democrats to advance the bill in the House. Advance the bill to the House, where it is certain to succeed. Senate Majority Leader Charles Schumer said today, sometimes we've taken steps forward. Other times, unfortunately, we've taken disturbing steps backwards. But today, we are all taking the monumentous steps forward for a greater justice for the LGBTQ Americans. This all but concludes a concrete push to codify same-sex marriage into law before the House flips in January and after. Associate Justice Clarence Thomas suggested that Obergefell, as well as a number of other Supreme Court decisions, should be reconsidered now after the decision in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health. We've discussed that at length, so Russia has dramatically stepped up its attacks on Ukraine, particularly against infrastructure and power supplies. Some regions are suffering now a shortage of water. A vast majority of the country is without power most of the time. Hospitals have been reportedly having to perform surgery under the light of a cell phone. We are anticipating this coming week to be just as bad. There is evidence not only that Russia is preparing for another onslaught of missiles, but they're also preparing bombers. They still do not have air superiority, so whether they actually intend to use them or not, we don't know. But there is at least some evidence of that. We'll be meeting with Operator Starsky this Friday at 1 p.m. if he is available. We were unfortunately unable to do our last one because of the strike. But we look forward to seeing him. Internet capacity has dropped to below 20% of its normal in Ukraine. We will see. But we would like very much to talk to him and see from somebody who is living it and going through it what they are witnessing. That is, again, scheduled for this Friday, 1 p.m. Meanwhile, the European Union Parliament has adopted a resolution recognizing Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism. The EU Parliament does not actually have legal authority to force this on to the member states, but they have recommended strongly that each of the EU member states adopt this resolution. Poland, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania have all adopted resolutions designating Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism. Russia's foreign ministry replied, and this is a direct quote, "I propose designating the European Parliament as a sponsor of idiocy." In time, has managed to get reporters into the Russian foreign ministry, and we have learned just a few hours ago that this was not their initial reply. They had also, this reply beat out their other two top replies of "nuh-uh" and "I'm the rubber, you're the glue." The media watchdog group NewsGuard has downgraded Fox News' credibility score to red, meaning it, quote, fails to adhere to basic journalistic standards. Well, many people may not have heard of NewsGuard. It's an extraordinarily influential organization when it comes to trusted news feeds and for advertisers. Most news sources won't post news on organizations not certified by NewsGuard, and many advertisers will not advertise on sources that are not certified by NewsGuard. This is expected to trigger an immediate loss of advertisers who, by policy, will not advertise on sources with the red rating from NewsGuard. The official reply from Fox News was that NewsGuard's management team was relying too heavily on left-leaning sources and was attempting to silence Fox News. They also pointed out that NewsGuard was a for-profit organization operating under the guise of an objective public service. That, of course, was the official reply from Fox News, a for-profit organization operating under the guise of an objective public service. Elon Musk tweeted today, quote, "This is a battle for the future of civilization. If free speech is lost in America, tyranny is all that lies ahead." This confirms that he knows how to read a fortune cookie. This, while he reinstates accounts that have repeatedly spread lies and misinformation, anti-Semitic and racist views, while continuing to block or actively suspend accounts critical of him. Chad Loder, a cybersecurity specialist who warned, I think it was about a week and a half ago, on Twitter of an alleged data breach, which we have now confirmed, and includes the account information of I want to say it was 12 million users, had his account suspended permanently for informing Twitter users that the data breach occurred. The unprecedented national uprising in Iran continues to grow, spanning over 150 cities and over 140 universities in all of Iran's 31 provinces. Protesters are speaking out more publicly and directly. At the World Cup, the U.S. Soccer Federation displayed Iran's national flag on social media, but without the emblem of the Islamic Republic in the center of the flag. During the Iranian national anthem, the team chose not to sing their own anthem. The Shia, Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Khomeini, his own niece, was arrested for civil dissent. She released a statement urging governments around the world to cut ties with Iran and to, quote, stop any dealings with this regime. She said, "Oh, free people, be with us and tell your governments to stop supporting this murderous and child-killing regime. This regime is not loyal to any of its religious principles and does not know any laws or rule except the force needed to maintain its power in any way possible. Now, in this critical moment in the history of all humanity, in this moment of history, all humanity is observing that the Iranian people, with empty hands and with exemplary courage and bravery, are fighting with the evil forces. At this point in time, the people of Iran are carrying the burden of this heavy responsibility alone and paying with their lives." Meanwhile, in China, riots and protests are also growing. Unprecedented footage of police battling protesters at an Apple plant emerged just a few days after a rout in which the police were all forced to flee while fighting the protesters. For the first time that I'm aware of, at least in recent history, calls from the protesters have gone from the much more sort of regional and general to much more specific and political, demanding that the leader of the country step down, saying that they do not want leaders for life, and chanting, "Give me liberty or give me death." The primary complaint is, as we've discussed before, the COVID lockdowns and the effect that this is having on their lives, and also the brutality with which some of these lockdowns are being enforced. This started when a fire killed, if I recall from memory, 15 people. And the evidence was very strong that the fire could have been dealt with much more were it not for the strict COVID restrictions. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the news. And yes, I'm aware we've skipped or missed quite a bit. Those are the highlights that we get. We have two very interesting shows coming up. Once again, we have Operator Starsky on Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and Professor Christopher Mowdy will be interviewing Dr. Richard Godbeer. I think he's pronounced it for me more than once, and I apologize, but on his book, A History of Human Emotion. It's interesting. It's not a history of it's not an emotional history of, oh dear Lord, I don't know. I think I'm going to move on. I've been intrigued and look forward very much to that. I'm going to check the live stream, and I think barring that, let's see. Um, yeah, I wasn't at first going to play or discuss the Aaron Brink video, which is the video we played at the beginning. The man who said he really all but said he'd rather his son have killed 5 completely innocent people than be gay. Well, he doesn't know who those innocent people are. Could be his parents, could be his neighbors, could be anybody. He obviously hasn't put much thought into it, but what makes that video shocking, and I don't think I have to tell anyone, but I'm going to say it anyway, is that really is quite clearly his view, and he's unabashed in it, and sort of presents it there without realizing just how obvious it is. And if I thought he were a lone nut, wouldn't have put it up. We don't need to just do that for the lulz. But my suspicion is quite strongly that there's a lot more people like him than we are aware of. They've just been silent for a while, and now they can talk and say these things, and that's not entirely a bad thing, I'll say, because now we know, we have a better idea of how many there are and who they are, and that's a very big plus. With any luck, it'll help us to have better conversations about things. I'm honestly not a fan of really destroying this guy over those comments, as horrific as they are. He's barely held together. I mean, he barely knows where he is. The problem isn't him. He's not the problem. The problem is a lot of people really agree with him. Not, well, a lot maybe. I don't know. It's impossible to say. More than I thought, and by a significant margin. That's the problem. And mocking him doesn't fix it. So I think it's worth being aware that I don't think those views are as rare as those of us who especially live north of the Mason-Dixon line like to think. I don't want to paint everybody south of the Mason-Dixon line as thinking this way, and I don't think it's the majority, but it's a lot. What's the other thing I got here?